Welcome to Lawyer Business Advantage. This podcast is dedicated to helping attorneys earn more money, get better clients, and spend more time with family. I'm your host, Alay and founder of law firm Success Group. Smart business guidance for small law firms begins in 3, 2, 1. And it's my pleasure to welcome back to Lawyer Business Advantage, Ryan Kimler, owner of the Net Profit CFO and host of the Net Profit podcast. Ryan, great to talk with you again.
Yes, absolutely. It's great to be here.
If you didn't catch Ryan, he was here last week talking about hiring from a financial perspective. So if you're looking to hire, and I know you all are, that is definitely a podcast episode worth checking out. Today, we're going to talk about something a little bit different. And when people think about a CFO, they don't really know what that means. It sounds pretty intimidating, like a chief financial officer. Oh my gosh, what is this person going to do? The only title I can think of, Ryan, that's worse is a controller. Like, oh my God. So people don't really know oftentimes what a CFO does. And then we talk about a fractional CFO or a part-time CFO, and their eyes just totally glaze over. So what we're going to talk about today is, a story of how you've helped a client. So if you could just kind of set the stage for us, what is this client going through and why did they seek you out?
Sure, absolutely. So, for starters, this is a law firm that is in California, actually. So, Lay, this is your, home state here, and
Actually not so much anymore. I mean, it is my home state, but like in January, we actually have more clients outside of the state of California than we
okay,
do in the state of California, believe it or not. Yeah.
okay, got it. Good to know. Um, so when I first came on, their biggest struggle was cash flow, for sure, right? Making payroll every single month, making sure that they had enough money. Um, And as we really took a dive into what was going on in their firm, there was a lot of problems that really came to the surface in a couple of different areas. All
Well,
right.
can
So,
I back you up for a second?
yes.
Sorry to do this, but it's something I have to do with all the technical experts when we talk about these things. And I want to dive into this because they were having financial problems. They weren't
Yep.
making payroll, so they were super stressed. When
Yep.
that happens, the instinct is to say, I'm not going to spend any money on anything. And yet they decided to hire you. So, what was going through their mind that said, you know what, we actually are going to invest in this, even though we don't have a lot of money, and we're going to go bring Ryan on board? Why was it, do you think, that they chose to hire you?
So when you go through my process with me, we have an initial meeting and I kind of figure out, first of all, I want to meet you and learn more about you if I'm going to work with you. Um, and just, learn more about your business. But then from there, the next step in my process is always that I'm offering a financial assessment that I'm covering the cost of. Now that financial assessment, really, really powerful tool. At a minimum, any time that I do a financial assessment for a law firm, I find $5,000 of literal real
Wow.
money, right? Either in profitability or cash flow, one way or the other. But that is a minimum, right? And that's really on the low side. So the financial assessment tool, it is a break-even analysis, it is a profitability analysis, it is a 2-year trend analysis, and there's one more analysis in it, and I just forgot it. But it's all rolled into one. Um, so it is a really, really powerful tool. And that firm, because of my process and because of, just the value that they got out of the assessment, they really saw a little bit of a taste of what it's like to work with me. And I think that really built their confidence that I could come in and fix their problems. The other thing that we do at my firm that's a little bit different than a lot of the CFO firms out there is I don't do long-term contracts. And so, they had the flexibility that, hey, if things were not working out, they could cancel, right? And we could go our separate ways. Fortunately for me, I've really helped this client, and fortunately for them, I've really helped them. Cash flow is much, much stronger today, and they've been a client now for a couple of years. So
Wow.
things are going really, really well.
Fantastic. So then, so they bring you on board, they go through that assessment process. They're very excited. They bring you on board. You're excited to be working with them. Describe to us kind of that high level approach that you were taking.
Sure. So first things that I started looking at, really, I start with the financial statements, right? Now, luckily for me, they did have good bookkeeping in place. So there was a little bit of cleanup that needed done, but it was not, the definitely not the worst that I've seen, right? I mean, I would probably rate it a 7 and 8 out of 10. Okay. So I did a little bit of cleanup, got it to a 10. All right. And then really started looking at the key metrics that I know to look at, right? Is payroll on track? Is marketing on track? Is overhead on track? Is their profitability on track? And then from there, really start looking at the balance sheet. Do we have a bunch of debt on the books? You know, do we have a whole bunch of AR? What are the issues, right? I always start going through the financials and learning the numbers and doing an analysis, and the financial assessment does a lot of that too.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, this is probably a good point to jump in and ask you a quick question.
Yep, go for
Um,
it.
can you share with us what the difference is between a CFO,
Yep.
an accountant, and a bookkeeper?
Sure. Sure. So let's start with the bookkeeper because I think that's easiest. So a bookkeeper is going to take all of your transactions that your business does, right? I mean, when you're operating your business, right, you're collecting payments from customers, you're paying bills, right? You have your office rent and you have, computer and software licenses and all that stuff. They're going to take all those transactions from your bank accounts, your credit cards, and they're going to put them into account categories. So, your office rent probably goes into a rent expense category. Okay. So your bookkeeper is doing all of that categorization. And when they get done with their job and all the transactions are booked, they've worked with you, they've worked out any questions, then the financial statements are done, right? As far as all the transactions are there. Okay. From there, typically, an accountant is one that comes in and reviews them and also makes any adjustments that are necessary. Sometimes adjustments are necessary. I'm not going to go into like what adjustments there are. That's
Right,
usually more
right.
on the tax side and
Yeah, we
really,
don't
really
want to do
account.
that.
Yeah, really, really accountancy, really, really deep. So they're going to kind of again finalize the statements, but at a whole completely new level, right? A whole nother stage, really an advanced level, if you would. Kind of relating this to a law firm, your bookkeeper is kind of like your junior associate that maybe is right out of law school, right? They're doing the lower level work. And then your accountant would be more like your senior attorney, right? That's going to review their work. So they review all the bookkeeping work, make sure things are in order, add on probably some finishing touches, which would kind of be like adjusting entries. And then, the books are done and completed and everything is good. And sometimes um, you'll have bookkeepers, especially if you're working with an outsourced firm, that really do the job of a bookkeeper and an accountant.
Hmm.
So they will review the books and they'll do that higher level thing. So then from there, you know, um, a lot of firms stop there and their accountant produces their reports and you as the attorney review them. And that's great, but that's all backwards looking. That's all the transactions that have been done. And so what a CFO is going to do is they're going to take those numbers and they're really going to do three things with them. Number one, we're always tracking revenue, profit, and cash flow. How much do we have? How much do we see coming in the future? Things like that. Number two, we're going to take the final numbers and we're going to analyze where are the strengths of the business and where are the weaknesses of the business. What are the numbers that are really holding the business back from being more successful? And then the third thing we're going to do is once we know what the weak numbers are and we know what needs to be fixed, we're going to propose corrective actions to the business owner so that we can turn the business around and make it more profitable with more cash flow.
Love that. Thank you for that. That's super clear and makes a ton of sense to me. And I picked up a thing or two in those descriptions as well about what a CFO does. And now it makes a lot of sense. If you want to think about growing your business, you're forecasting into the future, that's not something your bookkeeper or accountant can necessarily help you with. Um, We do some of that, but not to the level of depth that you do. So makes a lot of sense. So let's jump back into this client that you're working with. So
Sure.
their books were in good shape, and you got those things, touched them up here and there. Now their books
Yep.
were all good to go.
Yep. So one of the first things that I noticed was receivables were really, really high. And I also looked at, okay, what is the monthly revenue volume that the firm is doing? In other words, what are we really collecting on a monthly basis? And what is our trust funds in relation to that? And so right away, after looking at those three numbers, I knew we had way too many collections that were outstanding, which means the firm had done the work and not collected the money from clients. And we were way underutilizing trust funds. So we weren't collecting enough trust money so that when our billings came out, um, that we would have the money sitting there in the trust account that we could apply to the bills and transfer over as earned funds. And so those three things, they all kind of work together. But kind of doing an analysis and pulling those three numbers in and looking at them, you know, it's like just, looking at the statements without kind of comparing those three numbers and putting them all on one page and seeing, you know, that trend, it's hard to put two and two together without kind of doing that and put it all on one page.
Yeah, for sure. Great. And then what did you do next?
So we started diving into what are your guys' procedures as far as collecting trust funds? How much are you collecting? How often are you monitoring the trust funds? Do you have expectations around billing for your attorneys and how far they can bill beyond the trust retainer? And basically, summary is they didn't have any of those kind of procedures, right? And so one of the first few things that we did was start implementing some of those procedures to ensure that we had trust funds. All right. And so just to put some numbers behind the transformation that's kind of taken place here. When I first started, the trust transfer on a monthly basis would probably be somewhere between 30 to 40,000.
Okay.
Last month's trust transfer was about 180.
Wow.
Okay. So really, really big difference. Now, granted, this firm has grown. Okay. They
Sure.
were not the same size in revenue, but the percentage of billing that we actually had trust funds for went from the mid 20s to like 80%. Okay. And I still want to keep creeping that number up. I mean,
Right.
obviously, the more we can have in trust, and the more that we know we're not going to have to collect, the better off that we are. Okay.
Ryan, can
And
I jump and
so,
ask you a quick question about that?
yep.
So there's kind of two schools of thought on this, and I'm not militant about either one, but when it comes to trust accounts, what some firms do is they do, I think what you're suggesting, which is they get a good retainer from the client that's going to cover their costs, and then they replenish that retainer, whether it's evergreen or over time, but they replenish it. And the idea is that as they have legal expenses for that client, they transfer money from the trust account over into their operating account, so they can recognize that revenue and they can use it. The other approach is that clients will get a retainer, but they don't bill against the retainer. They kind of leave that there as a reserve, and then they bill the client normally every month separately, and then the client payments go into the operating account. And that trust account still stays that way until the matter's done. Then when the matter's done, they might, tap into it and use whatever's left over against it, or they might return um, the trust account, whatever's left, the balance back to the client. What are your thoughts on those two schools of thought, I guess?
Yeah. So I'm comfortable using either way, right? I mean, you're kind of you're kind of doing the same thing with both of those methods, right? The idea is there's always trust funds there to bill against, right? And so I'm okay with either way. There's more than one way to skin a cat. I'm okay with whatever the firm is comfortable with, or more comfortable with. Either way, doesn't really make a
Okay.
difference to me. I think the big key is let's make sure that especially when we're doing hourly billing, let's make sure that we have the funds there available to bill against, and that we're utilizing trust funds at a very, very high rate. And so that way the money's there and we're not running people down for collections. That's the
Got
big
it.
important thing.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Okay, thanks for that.
Of course.
So back to this client, you've worked
Yep.
with them now for quite some time, and what has your ongoing relationship with the client, how would you describe that, and how would you describe your working relationship with the client?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do at the Net Profit CFO is we do have monthly meetings, and so it's an ongoing relationship. I'm always there to help them, with any of the financial challenges that you run into with your law firm. And so we have a really great relationship. We have monthly scheduled meetings, and in fact, we actually have all of our meetings on the calendar for the rest of the year. And so we're very timely. We're very consistent. We have a great relationship, and uh, it's really really comforting for the law firm owner when 80-90% of your expenses for the month are transferred over on the first few days of the month, right? When you have a massive trust transfer, that's really really comforting, and the bank balance then stays really high for the majority of the month.
So when they started working with you, they were probably really stressed about
Yeah.
making payroll. They didn't have enough cash in the bank. What's their situation now?
Yeah, so now we don't have any, stress as far as cash in the bank or anything like that. The bank balance usually stays much, much stronger. And we've got usually a couple months of expenses in the bank. Um, and really the only stress that they're having would just be around their clients and client cases,
Got it.
um, and handling that kind of workload.
Very
Yep.
cool. And they're continuing to work with you.
Yes.
And so, what is the value you're providing now that they could theoretically, I guess, not work with you, but they are. And why is that?
Yeah, so we continue to, move forward and address new problems. I mean, after we took care of the accounts receivable problem, the next problem that we really dove into was payroll and utilization. They had a couple of attorneys on staff that were not having a high utilization rate of their hours, and that was really affecting the firm. And so, we continue to dive in and look at important metrics and address new issues. And then I've also helped them hire as well. And so, that was something that we talked about on the last episode, but just helping them work through those kind of numbers and have the ongoing help and support, really in financial expertise, um, is definitely the value they see in ongoing work. It's not just fix the cash flow issues one time. I mean, you're going to have continuing challenges, especially if you have a law firm that's growing.
And it's great to have a trusted financial soundboard to bounce these ideas off of that knows your firm intimately and can kind of work you through all of those things. The other thing I think you provide is a monitoring function, right? Over time, just making sure that the firm is still operating well financially and that all the right indicators are within range. To use a car analogy, there's enough fuel in the car or enough battery in the car, depending on what you drive. The tires are inflated, the thing is in
Yep.
good operating condition.
Yeah, absolutely. So every client we work with on the CFO side gets a scoreboard. They get a dashboard, kind of like the dashboard in your car. Does have indicators, right, on when something's not going right. It's going to be flagged red, right, and we're looking at those metrics on a monthly basis. We set targets for those metrics on an annual basis, so we know where the firm's going and where you want to get to, and that includes how much you want to make as an owner, and I think that's really, really important to not lose sight of, especially as you have a growing law firm. I mean, sometimes that's something that gets sacrificed is your expectation as far as how much you're making. But yeah, we use a scoreboard and we update it and look at it every single month.
Awesome. Ryan, tell us something that you're looking forward to, or a few things you're looking forward to in your firm over the next year or so.
Yeah, so this fall in August, I'm going to be doing a conference in Chicago. So I'm really excited about that live event. And then let's see, what else do I have coming up? Later in the fall, October, looking at doing an additional conference as well, and possibly I'm looking at going to CleoCon this year as well. So, really, really excited about that, and hoping to meet a lot of lawyers there.
Awesome. Ryan, if people want to connect with you outside of CleoCon, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, best place to find me is netprofitcfo.com. Right in the upper right-hand corner, I've got a link to my calendar. You're welcome to book a complimentary 30-minute session with me. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Ryan Kimler, Kimler, and my profile usually comes up towards the top. Those are the best two ways to connect with me.
Awesome. And you're also the host of the Net Profit podcast. So
Yes.
where can we find that?
Yeah, everywhere where you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher. We both use the same podcast production company, so we're out and published everywhere.
Yep, absolutely. Awesome, Ryan. Thank you so much for being a guest today on Lawyer Business Advantage.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the Lawyer Business Advantage podcast. One thing that would really help both us and other new potential listeners is for you to rate this show and leave a comment in iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you tune in to listen. And I want to hear from you, so connect with me on LinkedIn and let me know what you think of this episode. And if you are a solo or an owner of a small law firm and you're looking to earn more money, attract better clients, or reduce your stress, we would love to talk with you to see how we can help. Request your free law firm assessment by visiting lawfirmsuccessgroup.com. Again, that URL is lawfirmsuccessgroup.com. We look forward to talking with you soon. Thank you for listening. My name is Alay Yajnik. Until next time, remember, you can seize freedom, you can embrace happiness, you can build your perfect practice.